between 2015, where till today, I don't know who put my name up, but I have 3 people who, you see, I was one who actually, nominated, who are actually boasting about them. Throughout my career, there have been these unknown sponsors. Apart from my first job in banking that I applied for in 1988, the 3 successive roles that I've had in three organizations have been through somebody just calling me about an opportunity. And I think that's because also wherever I am, and I'm glad that the point about strategic visibility was mentioned. And again, this is for those who are maybe mid-career who are here. You've got to show up, you've got to shout out, you've got to stand up, you've got to just put your hand up and ensure that you're visible for the right reasons. I think a lot of us women shy away from that because we think it's vulgar, it's rash to actually toot your horn. But you can toot your horn and you should toot your horn. When job opportunities come, men grab it, we women, there's always an excuse. There's this phantom mother-in-law who won't allow us to, relocate from Nigeria to, to the States or whatever. And I think that's one of the benefits of peer group. So I'm going to talk about, I'm just trying to find my notes so that my quotes are ordered and well coordinated. So please just give me a second. Thank you. As regards peer groups, I would say that from very early on in my career, I've been involved in one peer group or the other. I'm sure many of us have heard of FMDQ, Financial Markets Dealers Quotation, FMDA, the Financial Markets Dealers Association. Well, this started as a peer group in the late 80s where treasurers came together. And peer groups or peer support groups are really about people who have, common conditions, common situations coming together and as equals, more or less, sharing experience, supporting one another, and so on. And so the earliest peer group, I would say, was in those days when, as treasurers, we came together. That morphed into being formalized into the Money Market Association of Nigeria, which I'm sure maybe nobody's heard of here before, and then FMDA. So those were the early days. And the benefit was the development of the market. We came together for a purpose. So it's not just about grouping, but why are we grouping? What's the value? What are we, just as Adesola said yesterday, what is the end, of all this? And then very early on, when I was at Citibank, and this was in the early 90s, we also had a managers forum. So it was not a gender peer group or a particular business peer group. It was a group of equals at a particular level in an organization who were at the sort of crossroads or sort of turn of their careers. What sort of longer term career line would you want to follow? What are the challenges and so on and so forth? Because making the jump from manager to AVP then was major and significant. So that also helped along the line. Then of course gender peer groups. Myself and 13 other women co-founded WIMBIZ, and I'm sure many of the women in here have heard of Women in Management, Business and Public Service. Again, as a peer group, coming together, to try and find ways in which we could help elevate and create more influence for women, both in business, entrepreneurs, and also women in public service. And I'm sure there will be a few people here who attended WIMBIZ events or WIMBIZ mentors or WIMBIZ mentees or WIMBIZ facilitators or whatever, and who would have seen changes in positive changes in their career since. Now, just to be able to leave something with you, I will categorize the benefits to me. So I've spoken generally about my involvement with peer groups, with some peer groups in my career. But just to make it a bit more ordered, I was thinking about how I was going to say this in 5 to 10 minutes. And so I've categorized the benefits into sort of 4 buckets. The first one I would say is link and linkages, the connectivity that comes from being in peer groups. My friends sort of famously know that if they need to find somebody or get somebody's phone number, they should ask me. I'm sure we've all heard of 6 degrees of separation. But with technology, in my view, it's 3 degrees of separation. Because you can find anybody. And immediately somebody says, oh, I need somebody's number, my lateral thinking cap comes on. Who do I know who might know somebody who knows the person? And I'm picking up my phone and immediately, and it's just from the circles and the circles of influence that I've belonged to over, whether formal or informal, over my career. So the connectivity, the network, the fact that if somebody's looking for work, in fact, there are a couple of global headhunters who, for the last 20, 25 years have been calling me for roles, and I've never been interested. So we've become friends over time. So now, when they're headhunting, and then, I have two cases, a friend, they call me and say, Bola, can we run this list by you of people who, were recruiting for a CEO here, or for a CFO, or for an independent non-executive director. And that's just through, I guess, people say to them, and I know, because they say, oh, somebody told us to speak with you. And many a time it would be through some association in a group of people that I know. So, currently, for example, I belong to, I'm co-founder of WIMBIZ. I belong to Gaia, which is another women's business club. Again, a different set of people, different industries. I'm a member of the Capital Club, which is a business peer group, so it's a professional business group as well. And I hope that I will be accepted in 125. And I just find that these circles, I know some of you may say, oh, but I don't have the time. No, I mean, with technology, and then, it's not something that you turn into your occupation, but it's just, the opportunity to meet people, meet young people. I mean, in fact, I think some of my sponsors have been the young people that I have met in my career and that I've mentored. Who say, why don't you talk to us? So linkage. That's the first one. The second one is leaning and learning. And leaning because I couldn't think of any other word for support that starts with an L, and I won't make it easy for me to remember it in my head. I've lost my notes now. So God help me. Leaning and learning. And the leaning aspect is about support systems. Okay? The first time I set up a women's network group, and in those days I'm not sure if any organization, if many at all, was when I became CEO of Kakama Discount House in 1999. And people were fairly young. And I could see different threads coming out of, my mother-in-law today, or, my husband wants me to stay at home and look after kids, or, I'm at this age, I'm not married, and, I can't stay late because I'm going to find the guys out there, and, all kinds of stuff going on. And we set up a women's network, and it really was about experience sharing, okay? And that's one of the things that, for example, WIMBIZ does. They actually go into organizations and set up women's day. I mean, today, almost every organization, I'm sure with International Women's Day coming out, the invitations, I certainly am receiving invitations already to speak here and there. Every year, it's a real bonanza of an opportunity to share. So, the women's networks have helped tremendously in, providing support. And for me, again, maybe this is more for Amanda's benefit, and less so for Ben and Laura, because they're here. But there are issues around getting married and not having children in our own part of the world. And so for the 13 years when I was trying to have children, it was through peer group support that made the 13 years go like 13 days. So there are also personal, relational benefits as well of having people around that one can share with, and so on and so forth. The learning, for me, is that I'm learning all the time. I mean, when I talk to people sometimes, they're amazed about the amount of information I know about a particular sector that's totally out of finance or the work that I do. But it's because I subscribe to all sorts of things. I belong to all sorts of groups. And so I'm learning continuously. And it's not just local stuff, global stuff. So there's that aspect as well. What can I learn? How can I upskill through my association with people that I have something else in common with, but that I can gain a lot from? So the first is link and linkages, connectivity, network. The second is learning and learning, which is about support and sort of upskilling. The third is another L, lobby, and that's more about advocacy. What do peer groups do? how can they, because again, it's not just meeting for meeting's sake, so we have, CFOs of, CEOs of PFAs here, coming together. How can you influence certain pension policies that may even be discriminatory against women, or that just generally enhance your industry? How can you be valuable? It's not just about, meeting every quarter. It's what can we do as a group to improve our industry, to enhance our industry, and so on. And that's a lot of what I also did in where, you hear NIBS today. I was actually interviewed the very first CEO of NIBS, and it's through coming together as bankers to say, you know what, we need to have a switch. So many other initiatives like that, one has led or been part of the leadership in driving. So it's important that as we come together, when the 8 CEOs, the buzz around the 8 bank CEOs came up, I think it was sometime last year, I actually invited the 8 of them for dinner in my house. So there was just 10 of us on the table. And it was what? For me to share my experience with them, to share what pitfalls, they may encounter. Because once there's a lot of buzz and noise, like they say, your hailers become your haters. So all the people there, congratulations and all that, the slightest mistake, and as a woman, it's newsworthy, okay? And have a chat with them and encourage them to set up, some sort of peer group structure to support one another. In fact, some of them had never met before. They met over my dining table. So, again, it's not just about belonging to a peer group. What peer groups can we also initiate? What can we do to support and help? So advocacy, very, very important. Lobbying, laws in parliament, regulations in our industry, and so on and so forth. We really need to take up the charge there in terms of advocacy. The fourth one is lift. So that was another word I was looking for. Lift. Mentorship, next gen. How do we pass the ladder down and across? Because it's also important to realize that even at a particular level of seniority, people get stuck. And they come to a crossroads where they don't know which way to turn. So how do you take that ladder and say, you know what, okay, I'm here, I'm retired today, I've got my portfolio of boards, I'll fight for to my peers, there, for some of them, there could be another executive career out there. So how do we help the next gen? And I'm really glad about what one of the clubs is doing, Gaia Club. They have the next gen sort of Gaia group called the Gazelles. So the Gazelles meet on their own, the more senior women meet, and then I don't know whether it's once a month or whatever, there's a meeting or webinar or seminar on some topical, exciting issue. I think yesterday's was about aesthetic cosmetology. Ensuring your jewelry, governance, crypto, whatever. So they come together, and that's where the experience sharing by the senior women with the sort of middle and upcoming women. So it beholds on us. This issue about strategic visibility. I mean, I meet people all the time who say, "Oh, I know you even to this." Oh, I see you in the papers and all that. But you're not going to see me in the papers for what's my favorite makeup routine. Or what's the brand? Yeah, because a lot of the time that's what's newsworthy. For the newspaper, what do you like with Wogi and Akara on Saturday morning? That is what will sell their papers. So we've got to also be very strategic about how we're out there. It has to be purposeful and also impactful. So I had 4 L's. So linkages, leading and learning, lobbying, lifting, but again, to an end. And I think that the end of it is really the 5th L, which is legacy. What is the impact to our community? What is the impact to the individuals that we deal with? What is it, when I think back at in my career, whether people today know it or not, if the need arises, they will know the contributions that one has made. Today we talk about repos, we're dealing in treasury bills, I'm sure we have treasury bill investment. Well, I was hired by Citi in 1989 to actually start the treasury bill market in Nigeria. I remember the day the very first transaction in Nigeria happened of one party owning a bill, selling to another, how we celebrated in our treasury that day. So and it doesn't matter whether people know or not, I know. And that's what matters. But the impact is there, the ripple effect, and so many other things. So it's important that we think about the end. Begin with the end in mind. For every role that I have, I think, how do I want to be remembered? How am I going to pass through this? Who do I want to impact? and how can I increase my circle of influence through that? And I think peer groups is one way of helping us create that legacy of impact, of value in our community, globally, and to the people who are around us. It provides the inspiration for other people to want to look up and want to be like us. I looked up and saw people I wanted to be like. I sat at their feet. Many of them were actually even men. I mean, I've been on boards where 9 CEOs of the biggest banks in Nigeria were my directors. I was the CEO, and all my, the names you all know, they were my directors. So, but instead of me being scared or worried about, oh God, I'm a young girl and all these, big men, I sat at their feet. I identified what each of their strengths were, and I would go to them and learn from them. So please, let us have lifelong learning, not just sort of, in a conventional way, but through our association, through our peer groups. And I really want to commend, Amanda and the team, because when people think about finance, they think about banking. But I would say it's actually 100 women in financial services, because that's what we're talking about. You've got insurance, you've got PFA, you've got the capital market, you've got the money market, you've got financial market, you've got private equity, corporate finance, and so on and so forth. And thank you, Jumpstart. I have 19-year-old twins, and I'm going to link them with Jumpstart, because that is also very important at the early stage. My daughter says, I want to intern at JP Morgan. I says, what do you want to do there? And she says, no. But I've tried to let them know that a career in finance is not just the financial aspect, because there are many, I mean, an organization needs to function. So you could have a career in HR in finance, not just specialize in HR. You could have a career in risk management, and risk management spreads across all industries. So I think, well done with all these initiatives, and I mean, I'm going to get on the side, because you said, 300 videos to watch? I'm retired now. So in between my board meetings, I'm watching Amanda's video. But thank you all very much for listening to me.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Adesola. And honestly,